Thrown onto the streets by her own family at just 17, with only $20 in her pocket, Lyra Bennett faced unimaginable hardships. But instead of giving up, she built an empire from nothing. Years later, successful and empowered, Lyra returned to her sister's luxurious engagement party, not to celebrate, but to expose the shocking lies and dark secrets her family had hidden for decades. Watch how Lyra's quiet strength, fierce determination, and brilliant strategy led her from betrayal and abandonment to freedom and redemption. Will Lyra finally get justice and heal from past wounds? Or will confronting her family reopen deeper scars? If you've ever been underestimated or betrayed, this powerful story of courage, intelligence, and ultimate redemption is for you. It was the coldest night of my life, and the moment everything I knew shattered into pieces. At 17, standing outside our grand but empty mansion in San Francisco, the chill biting through my thin sweater, I clutched tightly onto the $20 bill crumpled in my trembling hand. My backpack, filled hastily with only the bare essentials, felt heavier with each second that passed. The lights of my former home glowed warmly, mocking my exile. Inside, through the frost-laced window, I saw Sienna, my younger half-sister, the precious princess of the Bennett family, leaning against the glass with a cruel smile, triumphant and cold. Behind her stood my father, Richard Bennett, distant as always, and Julia, his wife, my stepmother, who had orchestrated this moment with meticulous cruelty. My crime? A theft I never committed, but guilt was irrelevant. The accusations had been carefully fabricated. With my father's tacit approval and Julia's encouragement, my fate was sealed in silence. The night swallowed me as I stumbled down the driveway, my mind racing with disbelief and confusion. The biting wind pierced through me, a bitter reminder of my newfound reality. I wandered aimlessly, the bustling city around me oblivious to my despair. Shops closed, streets deserted, only the hum of distant traffic kept me company. Hunger gnawed at me, but pride forced me to ignore it. That first night, I huddled behind a fast food restaurant, too numb to cry, too shaken to fully comprehend my abandonment. Days passed in a blur of survival, each morning waking to aching bones and empty stomachs. My hands became rough from washing dishes and scrubbing floors in exchange for scraps. Until the day I found Gloria. Or perhaps she found me. Gloria ran a small diner tucked away at the end of a forgotten street. Her eyes, kind and perceptive, saw through my guarded walls. "You hungry, child?" she asked softly one evening, her voice breaking gently through my armor of pride. I nodded silently, shame and gratitude mingling painfully within me. Gloria's warm diner became my sanctuary. There, under the soothing guidance of her wisdom, I learned not just to cook and bake, but something far more valuable, the worth of resilience and dignity. Every meal I made, every table I served, slowly rebuilt fragments of my broken self. Months turned into a year, and under Gloria's supportive gaze, I completed my GED, acing every test despite the exhaustion of long workdays and endless nights of study. The day I received my acceptance letter and scholarship from the University of Portland was bittersweet. Gloria hugged me fiercely, whispering words that became the anchor of my future. "You are stronger than your past, Lyra. Remember, your worth is yours alone to define." I left for Portland with newfound purpose, but never forgot the betrayal etched deep into my past. It would become fuel, quietly propelling me forward, toward a future I was determined to shape with my own hands. I remember clearly how the chill bit into my bones as I wandered aimlessly down the damp, dimly lit streets of San Francisco, my worn-out sneakers splashing through shallow puddles, the dirty water seeping into my socks. The night was alive with distant city noises, a distant siren, laughter spilling from bars, cars gliding silently under street lamps. Yet, for me, there was only silence. the loudest silence I'd ever known. My fingers clenched around the crumpled $20 bill, the only money left of my privileged past. I paused under the neon lights of a 24-hour diner, hesitating at the door. The warmth inside felt like a cruel mockery, reminding me just how quickly my entire life had unraveled. "Are you coming in or not, sweetheart?" A tired voice broke my trance. An elderly woman stood at the doorway, her silver gray hair pulled back into a neat bun, her apron stained yet cleanly pressed. I nodded, weakly, stepping inside. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and bacon filled my senses, painfully reminding me how empty my stomach was. Finding a booth tucked away in a quiet corner, I sank down heavily, unsure of what to do next. The woman approached me, her notepad in hand. Her name tag read Gloria. "You look like you could use a hot chocolate and some pancakes," she observed gently, without judgment or pity. Just the hot chocolate," I murmured, ashamed to admit my limited finances. Gloria eyed me carefully, then scribbled something down. "The pancakes are on the house tonight. You look like you could use them." As she walked away, tears stung my eyes, threatening to betray the last shred of dignity I was desperately clinging onto. Those pancakes tasted like hope, warm and sweet, a small comfort against the chill that had settled permanently inside me. "Thank you," I whispered as Gloria cleared my empty plate. She paused, eyes thoughtful. "Kid, you got anywhere to go tonight?" My throat closed and I shook my head silently, unable to find the words. She sighed deeply, then spoke decisively. "My niece just moved out of her apartment above the diner last month. It ain't fancy, and you'll have to clean it up yourself, but it's warm and dry. Stay there till you get yourself sorted." I stared at her, disbelief flooding my chest. "You barely even know me." Gloria leaned closer, her voice steady and certain. "Kid, I've been around long enough to spot good folks when I see them. Besides, everybody deserves a little kindness when they hit rock bottom." That night, lying on the old mattress that smelled faintly of lavender soap, wrapped in an oversized blanket Gloria had lent me, I realized I'd never truly known kindness until I met a stranger willing to offer warmth without expectation. In the cold darkness, I silently made myself a promise. I would never again let myself be at the mercy of people like my family. I would build something from nothing, and I would do it on my own terms. I didn't know then exactly how I'd accomplish it, but as sleep finally claimed me, I held tightly to that small ember of determination. Little did I know, the strength I found that night would be tested again and again in the years to come, each challenge sharpening my resolve, each betrayal reinforcing my determination. But that was the night everything truly began. Days quickly turned into weeks, and those weeks quietly melted into months. My routine was simple and demanding. Wake up before sunrise, scrub tables, mop floors, and stock shelves. Each morning greeted me with the familiar aroma of fresh coffee brewing and bread rising in the oven, a comfort that slowly stitched together my fractured sense of self. Gloria ran her diner with quiet authority and kindness, effortlessly becoming the mother figure I'd yearned for all my life. One evening, after closing hours, I was wiping down the counter when Gloria gently slid onto the stool across from me, placing 2 cups of chamomile tea between us. "You work too hard, Lyra," she remarked softly, sipping her tea. Her blue eyes were wise, compassionate. "It's like you're trying to punish yourself." I paused mid-motion, startled by how accurately she'd pinpointed my internal struggle. The rag twisted tighter in my hands. "I'm not punishing myself," I finally whispered. "I'm proving that they were wrong about me." Gloria raised an eyebrow, patiently waiting for me to elaborate, her silence a comforting invitation rather than a demand. "My father and stepmother always said I was worthless, lazy, that I'd never amount to anything." The words felt bitter on my tongue, but saying them aloud was oddly liberating. "I can't let that be true." Gloria nodded slowly, absorbing my confession. "Child, you don't have to live your life proving them wrong. You only need to live proving yourself right." Her words sank deeply, like rain soaking into parched soil. For the first time, it occurred to me that my identity didn't need to be anchored to their judgments. I looked up, meeting Gloria's gaze, searching for guidance. "But where do I even start?" She smiled, gently squeezing my hand. "Right here, Lyra. Right now. One step at a time. You're smart. You're resourceful. Find something that speaks to you, something meaningful." That night, lying awake in my modest apartment above the diner, I allowed myself to dream, unafraid. I thought of how hungry and desperate I'd been when Gloria first found me. Food, for me, had been survival. But what if it could be more than just survival? What if it could be a bridge to healing, to strength? The idea lingered, quietly taking root within my heart. Over the next year, I poured myself into learning everything I could about food, not just cooking, but nutrition, health, and wellness. Gloria taught me her recipes, old and new, while I devoured textbooks from the public library every spare moment I found. When I earned my GED certificate after months of late-night study sessions, Gloria threw a small party, baking my favorite chocolate strawberry cake. As I blew out the solitary candle she'd placed in the center, she hugged me tightly, whispering softly into my ear, "I'm so proud of you, Lyra. This is only the beginning." Then came the letter from Portland State University acceptance with a full scholarship in business administration. Holding the envelope, my hands shook uncontrollably. Gloria beamed proudly, her eyes shimmering with joyful tears. "You earned this, sweetheart," she said, voice heavy with emotion. "Remember, it's your turn to write the story now." And so, 3 weeks later, I stood at the Greyhound bus station, backpack slung across my shoulder, ticket clutched firmly in hand. Gloria pulled me into a final embrace, her voice steady, comforting. "Don't you ever forget who you are, Lyra Bennett. No one can take that away from you." I watched her shrink into the distance as the bus pulled away, heart pounding with a blend of excitement and uncertainty. For the first time since that bitter winter night, I felt completely free, no longer defined by my family's cruelty. Portland was my fresh start, my chance to build something real, something meaningful. But even as hope filled me, I knew that freedom came with a cost, and shadows from my past wouldn't remain buried forever. I had no idea how deeply those shadows would intertwine with my future, challenging everything I was about to build. Portland welcomed me with relentless rain and a sky forever painted in shades of muted gray, yet for me, it felt like sunshine. Here, no one knew my past. No one looked at me with judgment or pity. Every step on the rain-slicked sidewalk felt like a tiny, victorious rebellion against everything I'd been told I couldn't achieve. College life moved swiftly, filled with lecture halls, stacks of textbooks, and countless sleepless nights, illuminated only by the glow of my small desk lamp. I rented a tiny attic apartment, barely larger than a walk-in closet, but it was mine, a sanctuary of independence. The walls were thin, and the ceiling sloped sharply. But there was a window overlooking a quiet street lined with cherry blossom trees. Each morning, I'd sip coffee, watching petals drift silently to the pavement, reminding myself of how transient pain could be if one chose to move forward. During my second semester, in a cramped coffee shop buzzing with students hunched over laptops, I first met Jasper. He sat across from me, completely absorbed in some complex spreadsheet, fingers dancing deftly across his keyboard. Dark curls fell messily over thick-rimmed glasses, and an earnest intensity radiated from him, magnetic and comforting all at once. "You okay over there?" he suddenly asked without looking up, startling me into laughter. "Sorry, was I staring?" "Only a little bit," he replied warmly, finally raising his gaze, smiling. "I'm Jasper." "Lyra," I answered softly, feeling a flush of warmth in my cheeks. That casual introduction turned quickly into friendship, and within weeks, Jasper became my closest confidant. He was majoring in finance, analytical, and meticulous, the perfect counterbalance to my sometimes impulsive passion. We spent countless hours discussing our dreams, late into the night, at worn wooden tables tucked away in coffee shops or wandering through Portland's damp streets. One night, as we sat huddled over hot cups of tea in my tiny apartment, Jasper nudged me playfully. "You know, with your passion for nutrition and your knack for business, you could actually do something revolutionary." His words sparked an idea that had been quietly forming within me since my first lonely days on the streets of San Francisco. Nourishment had saved me, not merely food, but kindness, dignity, and compassion. I wondered if I could create something tangible from those intangible gifts Gloria had given me. "What if," I began hesitantly, "we built a business around healing people through food, something specifically designed to help people recover from illness or surgery?" Jasper leaned forward, intrigued. "Tell me more." As I outlined my vision, something within me ignited a fire that had lain dormant far too long. Jasper listened intently, jotting notes, his enthusiasm feeding my own confidence. By the early hours of dawn, amidst scattered papers and half-empty mugs, Nourish Plus was born. The next 2 years became a blur of frantic activity research, testing recipes, late-night planning sessions, and endless paperwork. Jasper and I navigated permits, health inspections, and funding challenges together, always buoying each other's determination. There were days of crushing self-doubt, moments when I'd stare blankly at our modest kitchen setup, wondering if I was foolish to dream this big. But then our first order came, a small contract with a local rehabilitation center. Jasper ran into our shared office, waving the paperwork excitedly. "Lyra, we did it! They signed!" We hugged tightly, laughing and crying all at once, celebrating a small but significant victory. Soon, one contract turned into 2, then 4. And within a year, Nourish Plus began gaining traction, building a steady client base across local healthcare facilities. As our company grew, so did whispers of my past. Occasionally, a nightmare would jolt me awake visions of Sienna's taunting smile, my father's cold stare, but I quickly buried them under a mountain of work, determined to never again let their shadows define me. Then, one morning, as Jasper and I reviewed quarterly reports, an unexpected letter arrived. Crisp ivory paper bearing the elegant crest of the Kingston Group, one of the largest healthcare conglomerates on the West Coast. My heart froze as I read the invitation. "You are cordially invited to the engagement celebration of Andrew Kingston and Sienna Bennett. Your presence would be deeply appreciated." My hands shook uncontrollably, the card slipping from my fingers onto the desk. "Lyra?" Jasper's voice was cautious, his eyes scanning the invitation. "Who are these people?" My throat tightened painfully as memories surged back. "My family," I whispered bitterly. "They're the ones who abandoned me." Concern deepened his gaze. "You don't have to go, Lyra. You owe them nothing." A cold clarity settled within me. I met Jasper's eyes steadily, my voice calm and resolute. "You're right, I owe them nothing. But maybe it's time they finally realize that." I picked up the invitation, feeling its heavy weight in my palm, aware that this moment marked a critical turning point. It was finally time for them to face the woman they'd thrown away, the woman I'd fought so hard to become. In the weeks leading up to the event, I quietly began gathering every thread of evidence I could find. Old wounds reopened as I sifted through bank statements, public records, and made cautious calls to my father's associates who barely remembered me. Every detail felt like salt on wounds I'd long pretended had healed. Jasper became my silent partner, methodically organizing the paperwork, placing gentle, reassuring hands on my shoulder whenever the past threatened to overwhelm me. One rainy afternoon, as the city shimmered through watery windows, I received a package from an unlisted address. My hands shook slightly as I carefully tore open the thick manila envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a short, handwritten note. Lyra, I should have done this years ago. Forgive me. Nathan. My heart tightened painfully at the name. Nathan had been my father's accountant for over a decade, a quiet, reserved man who'd barely looked my way when I was thrown out. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, breathing sharply as hundreds of files began loading. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, false tax documents, all meticulously organized. It was the confirmation I'd dreaded yet desperately needed. Jasper stepped behind me, his eyes scanning the screen with disbelief. My God, Lyra, this is everything. This could bring your whole family down. The weight of the information crushed the air from my lungs momentarily. I stared at the digital mountain of corruption and felt oddly detached, as if viewing my own life through a blurred lens. You don't have to do this, Jasper whispered softly, kneeling beside me. You could let this go, move forward. You've already built so much. I turned to him slowly, meeting his concerned eyes. If I let this go, Jasper, they'll never stop. They'll keep hurting people like they hurt me. I can't allow that. He nodded solemnly, understanding reflected deeply in his eyes. Then I'll be right beside you. The day of the engagement party arrived swiftly. As evening fell, I stood in front of a full-length mirror, carefully smoothing out the deep crimson velvet dress I'd chosen. The fabric hugged me elegantly, reflecting the person I'd become, strong, confident, no longer hidden in shadows. I caught Jasper's reflection standing quietly behind me. Ready? He asked softly, adjusting his tie nervously. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, as I'll ever be. When we arrived at the Kingston Grand Hotel, the scale of extravagance momentarily took my breath away. Chandeliers glittered overhead, crystal glasses clinked gently, and laughter flowed like champagne. My pulse quickened as I caught sight of familiar faces. My father, older and somehow smaller than I'd remembered, standing stiffly next to my stepmother, whose eyes narrowed sharply as she recognized me. Sienna, radiant in a pale ivory gown, clung possessively to Andrew Kingston's arm, her eyes widening in shock as she noticed my presence. I approached calmly, a polite smile fixed firmly on my face. Congratulations, Sienna. Andrew, I greeted smoothly, offering my hand. Andrew shook it warmly, oblivious to the tension. Thank you for coming. And you are? Sienna answered coldly, cutting me off sharply. My half-sister, Lyra. The word half-sister sliced into me, an intentional slight to diminish my place here. But tonight, that tactic held no power. I smiled politely at Andrew. I hope your future together is built on honesty and trust, I emphasized lightly, catching Sienna's eye meaningfully. Her jaw tightened imperceptibly. Dinner progressed in a blur of polite conversation, expensive dishes I barely tasted, and Jasper's steadying presence beside me. Each passing minute tightened my nerves, but I reminded myself why I'd come. My heart hammered as dessert was served. Now was the moment I'd chosen. Slowly, I stood, glass gently tapped with my spoon, bringing the hall to silence. Dozens of curious faces turned toward me, my family among them, eyes wary. I took a breath, steadying my voice. I'd like to offer a toast, I began smoothly, voice unwavering, to family, the one you're born into, and the one you choose. Glancing briefly at Jasper, who nodded supportively, I continued calmly, but trust and honesty must always come first. Unfortunately, tonight, we celebrate under a shadow of deception. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sienna paled, gripping Andrew's arm tighter. My father began rising from his seat, face flushed with anger. Lyra, he warned sharply, voice dangerously low. Stop this. But I met his eyes fearlessly. No, father, you've silenced me long enough. Pulling from my handbag a sealed envelope containing copies of Sienna's incomplete university records, I handed it directly to Andrew. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion, then to deep shock. What is this? He asked slowly. Proof that your fiancé never completed medical school despite her claims. I turned steadily toward Sienna. Isn't that right? She stared back helplessly, lips trembling, eyes filling rapidly with tears. Please, Lyra, don't do this. Ignoring her pleas, I revealed the USB in my hand, raising it clearly for all to see. There's more, I announced softly, voice filled with quiet strength. On this flash drive are financial documents revealing fraudulent accounts, money laundering, and years of tax evasion perpetrated by my father and stepmother. Gasps echoed around the room. My stepmother stood rigidly, her normally composed demeanor shattered. My father's face went white, anger replaced by raw panic. At that exact moment, as if orchestrated perfectly, doors opened swiftly, and uniformed IRS agents entered, flanked by police officers. The room erupted into chaos, whispers rising into open exclamations as my father and stepmother were approached and promptly placed under arrest. Sienna, losing all composure, sank to the floor, her carefully styled hair falling into disarray. Lyra, she whispered brokenly, I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked painfully, pleading with sincerity I'd never expected. I paused, my heart heavy not with vengeance, but sadness for how broken this family truly was. Forgiveness, I said quietly, clearly, is a privilege, Sienna, and I don't owe you or anyone such a privilege. Turning calmly away, I walked through the stunned crowd, Jasper at my side, every step forward feeling like shedding a final heavy burden. Outside, beneath stars sparkling through city lights, Jasper gently grasped my hand. Are you okay? I smiled softly, inhaling deeply the crisp night air. For the first time in my life, Jasper, I truly am. We left quietly, heading toward a small bakery open late, a simple ritual we'd formed years ago when celebrating quiet victories. Sitting there, savoring sweet chocolate and strawberry cake, I finally understood Gloria's long-ago advice. Freedom wasn't simply escaping one's past, it was choosing your future despite it. Tonight, I'd chosen mine. In the days following the engagement party, the media feasted on the scandal, sensationalizing every detail of my family's disgrace. Headlines flashed across every platform, dissecting the downfall of the Bennetts, a prominent attorney indicted, a stepmother exposed, and the daughter whose illusions of privilege shattered publicly. Reporters chased me relentlessly, microphones thrust forward, cameras eager to capture any hint of gloating or triumph. Yet each time, I gave them nothing but calm silence and steady resolve. There was no joy in revenge, only a quiet, sober satisfaction in justice finally served. But beneath my composure lay an exhaustion that ran bone deep. The nightmarish images haunted my dreams. Sienna's desperate pleas, my father's stricken face, my stepmother's disbelief. They'd never been loving, yet somehow seeing their lives unravel offered me no pleasure. Instead, it underscored the tragedy of wasted relationships and lost chances at genuine family bonds. One evening, while scrolling mindlessly through the endless barrage of messages and notifications, I stumbled upon a voicemail from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I pressed play. Lyra, it's Sienna. Her voice sounded broken, raw with emotions she'd always hidden. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm sorry, truly sorry. Everything I did because I was afraid to disappoint them. I wanted their approval so badly I didn't see the cost. And now I've lost everything. Please, if nothing else, just know I never wanted this pain for you. I'm so sorry. As the message ended, a heavy silence filled my apartment. Jasper, sitting nearby reviewing financial statements, looked up, concern evident in his gentle gaze. Lyra? I handed him the phone quietly. After listening carefully, he set it down, studying me closely. How does that make you feel? I shook my head slightly, struggling to find the right words. I always imagined I'd feel justified, vindicated, but instead I just feel empty, as if no one really won in the end. He reached across the table, clasping my hand reassuringly. Maybe because this wasn't a competition. Maybe it was just the painful cost of exposing truths that needed to come out. I nodded slowly, considering his words carefully. Jasper had always been insightful, a steady compass pointing toward honesty and clarity whenever I felt lost. Days slipped quietly into weeks. The media eventually found new scandals, and slowly the spotlight faded, leaving me once again free, this time permanently. On a gentle spring afternoon, I returned to San Francisco. It felt surreal walking those familiar streets again, where every corner whispered haunting memories. Finally, I arrived at the diner, its warm, neon, open sign a welcoming beacon. As I pushed open the familiar glass door, the tiny brass bell chimed softly, instantly transporting me back in time. Gloria turned, eyes widening, then filling with tears as she embraced me tightly. "You've grown so strong, my girl," she whispered warmly. "Because you believed in me," I replied quietly, sincerity filling each word. That night, as we sat at the diner counter sipping tea, I finally opened up fully, recounting every detail I'd held back over the years. Gloria listened silently, her presence soothing and steady. When I'd finished, she squeezed my hand softly, eyes wise and kind. "Healing isn't about forgetting, Lyra. It's about finding peace in the remembering." We sat in comfortable silence, her words quietly threading through my thoughts, lifting burdens I'd carried for too long. Returning to Portland afterward, my days fell back into the steady rhythm of work and growth. Nourish Plus blossomed beyond my wildest dreams, soon expanding nationwide, its mission of nourishment and healing touching thousands of lives. Success no longer felt like proof of worth, but rather a natural reflection of passion, determination, and care. One tranquil evening, as Jasper and I sat in our now familiar bakery, savoring cake to celebrate a particularly successful business quarter, he regarded me thoughtfully. "You know," he began, voice gentle, "I think Gloria was right all along." I tilted my head curiously. "About what?" He smiled softly. "Your freedom wasn't about escaping your past. It was about choosing how you live your future." His words resonated deeply, capturing precisely what I'd learned through every painful trial and triumph. I smiled back warmly, nodding in agreement. "Exactly." Quietly, he took a breath, his voice growing serious yet gentle. "Lyra, you've been through enough darkness. Now it's time for something brighter. Let me be part of that." His sincerity filled the space between us, clear and unspoken yet fully understood. I felt my heart soften, recognizing a truth I'd carefully guarded, waiting for the right time. Finally, I allowed myself to embrace it openly. I reached across the table, intertwining my fingers gently with his, feeling calm certainty settle within me. "Jasper," I whispered softly, "you've always been part of it, from the very beginning." In that simple, quiet moment, under the warm bakery lights, surrounded by the fragrance of sweet strawberries and chocolate frosting, I finally understood the full measure of what I'd won, not revenge, but genuine freedom, quiet strength, and the invaluable gift of someone truly deserving of my trust. Years later, I often found myself reflecting on that long, difficult journey. Standing on stage at a charity event for disadvantaged youth, I shared my story openly, raw, honest, unfiltered. Afterward, as applause filled the hall, a young girl timidly approached me, her eyes wide with uncertainty yet hopeful curiosity. "Ms. Bennett," she asked quietly, voice trembling slightly, "how did you find the courage to keep going when everyone said you weren't good enough?" I knelt, meeting her earnest gaze gently, remembering clearly my own younger self. "You know, sometimes the people who hurt us most don't deserve our tears, and sometimes the hardest part is forgiving ourselves for believing them in the first place." She listened closely, absorbing every word intently. Will it ever stop hurting? I smiled gently, truthfully. The pain fades, but it never fully disappears. But over time, you'll realize it doesn't have power over you unless you let it. You have the choice to define who you become. As she nodded thoughtfully, hope sparking gently in her eyes, I stood once more, heart lighter than I'd ever known it. Stepping outside into the warm golden twilight, Jasper waited patiently, a gentle smile lighting his familiar features. We walked quietly toward home, hand in hand, the city lights twinkling around us. Freedom, I understood clearly now, wasn't something won overnight or simply handed down. It was hard-earned, quietly cultivated, consciously chosen, and above all, always worth celebrating.